participants joining us from these platforms. So I can see a few more introductions. So hi, Ritesh. There's someone again saying, hi, Tim, good to see you after a really long time. So a lot of people, I'm assuming, have already joined our sessions. Hi, Donna. Hi from Rossi. Okay. Hi, Prasad. Hi, everybody. Okay, so I think it's wonderful. We have people joining from across the world. It's a great mix of audience, and I think we're also live on YouTube and LinkedIn. So I'll quickly introduce myself. I'm Shweta, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. Like you can see on the screen, today we're going to discuss about PMBOK 8 and about the PMP updates that are coming up. We're going to discuss about the exam format. Is it going to be harder, and what you should do to prepare yourselves for all the changes that are coming up ahead. So it's going to be a wonderful session, and I can see that most of our participants have joined in. So we'll quickly talk about today's agenda, and also I'll introduce Tim in just some time. I'll tell you his introduction, and then from there we'll dive right in and discuss all of these points. So today's agenda is as follows. So we are going to first talk about why the PMP 2026 update matters. We will also talk about the current PMP exam format and structure, because it's important to know about the changes that are coming up, and this will help us set some context for the same. We're going to discuss about what stays the same versus what's changing in 2026. So for people who are already preparing, you can make a decision if you want to take up the session before the changes come in or after the PMBOK update. We're also going to talk about a comparison between PMBOK 7 and PMBOK 8, just to give you all a good perspective of the key changes that are coming up. We will also discuss about the domain weightage and new topic emphasis, PMP 2026 timeline, and also the exam window, so you know the exact time and you can prepare for it accordingly. We also have a slide on how to prepare for PMP in 2026. And to help with that, we also have a 5-week plan to clear the current PMP exam. So from what we have seen, there are a lot of participants who have prepared with the current format. So we are going to help you to clear this exam in 5 weeks as well. And finally, we are going to talk about Simplilearn's PMP certification and how it can probably help you. So this is the agenda for today's webinar, and I'll quickly tell you some ground rules. For anyone who has attended webinars with us before, you might already know. So if you have any questions, we request you to put these questions in the Q&A box. So if you share it in the chat box, we might miss out on these. If you share it in the Q&A, I will pass these questions on to Tim, and he will be answering most of your queries, as many as we can. Please use the chat box effectively. Do not share external links. It would be highly recommended to pay full attention to today's conversation, because it's really going to be interesting. And for your certificate of participation, we will be sharing a poll towards the end of the webinar, and you can fill up the poll and you'll receive your certificate in your registered email ID. Apart from that, we are also introducing something new. So we have a post-webinar resource that we will be sharing with the participants who stay till the end of the webinar. So again, you can just fill up the same form for certificates, and we will share the post-webinar resource as well. So that's a highlight. That's a key change that we are bringing in, and we are excited that all of you are here. Right. So I just quickly want to know how many of you are attending our webinars for the first time, or have you already attended webinars with us before? First time. Okay, I can see a lot of first timers. First time. Okay, all right. So a few of you have attended webinars with us before. So for anyone who's joining us for the first time, welcome to Simplilearn webinars. We're really excited to have you here. And for anyone who has already attended our webinars, thank you again for joining. We'll ensure that you have a wonderful time with us today. So for anyone who's new, I'll quickly tell you guys a brief introduction about Simplilearn, what we do. So we have already helped 8 billion plus learners advance their careers across 150 plus countries. And we do this through global partnerships, like you can see on the screen. So we partner with universities and also other industry partners like Google, IBM, Microsoft, PMI to deliver programs that are really effective for learners. And Something that we're also proud of is why our programs stand out. So most of our learners have reported a 50% salary hike on program completion. They have also rated us 4.8 out of 5 for their learning experience, something again we're really happy about. And the graduation rate is 80%. So that's about Simplilearn. I hope I haven't taken much of your time. And now we will move on to one of my favorite parts of the webinar, and that's introducing our guest speaker. So our guest speaker for today's webinar is Timothy Jerome. So Tim is someone I personally look up to in the project management space, not just because of his credentials, but because of the depth of experience he brings into every conversation that we have. Tim has been a part of the PMP ecosystem for over 2 decades now, and he has earned his PMP back in 2003. And since then, he's worked across some incredibly complex real world environments, leading some great teams. And what really stands out to me is that he's not just practiced project management, but he has taught it for more than 20 years. And he has been helping project managers understand not just how to clear the exam, but how to think like a project leader. And that really sets him apart. So currently, I think he has also published a book. He's the author of Lead Smarter, Not Harder. And that has recently come out. It would be great if all of you could go ahead and check his book out as well. So today, this is not just going to be about tips. It's a great conversation. So, Tim, I'm sure everyone wants to hear more from you. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself? Once again, thank you for joining us.
And thank you. I appreciate the introduction. I can't add too much to Sweta, but I do say that it's a pleasure and honor to be with the people that I serve. Not just Simplilearn. I work with Simplilearn. I have since 2015, 2016. Yeah, I think we started back in 2014, so it's been over a decade that I've been working with Simplilearn. We've had a great experience together, and we found the magic to work with. How do we actually support this? And it had to do with, Simplilearn has some very common objectives, which says we want to help the future professionals be stable and confident with their working. And my area was, how can we do this in such a way where we can give people who are put into a management position by accident the confidence to actually do it well. And it was just using the PMP preparation as a format for talking about this that made it magic. And so I actually am very lucky to be working with you, the people who are in my classes, as well as Simplilearn, working on something that I'm passionate about. And that's one of the reasons why you may see me a little bit more engaged in how I do these things as well as what I do. That's a big secret about being a manager and leader. We have a real sense of purpose. And luckily, I have a fellow traveler like Simplilearn that supports the same thing I do. And I really thank you for bringing me in, Sweta, and helping me develop this. I think we have some really neat things to talk about.
Thank you so much, Tim. That means a lot. And thank you for your wonderful introduction as well. I'm sure everyone wants to hear more about the PMP exam and the updates. So I'll get right to the point. We all know that changes are coming up in the exam format with PMBOK 8. So what are why does this 2026 PMP update matter so much? Could you share your perspective on that?
So we have to go back in history. Okay.
Yeah.
There's two things that happened. The actual first PMBOK came out, the body of knowledge came out in 1999. And I got my PMP under the second edition, which they call the 2000 edition. And so I taught under the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. And now I'm going to be teaching under the eighth. And I've seen this transition go. Why? Because business changes. People don't change. People and human behavior don't change, but business change. And we know what the changes we are now, right? First of all, we have technology changes. You think artificial intelligence
Yeah.
is strange and impacting us. There's so much more. And we've forgotten about COVID. And we still have COVID back here. And we have all sorts of other things that we realize. And we haven't gone through a lot of other things that we're going to be going through. And we're going to be surprised constantly. So how can we keep confident and making sure that we are prepared for the transitions that governments and corporations and now we ourselves are thrust to manage? And that's what we're looking at. And the last thing I want to add to this is the whole perspective. The last real big solid transition was from the fifth to the sixth edition. They refined everything, right? We finally had those 10 knowledge groups. We had knowledge areas. We had 49 processes. We had five process groups, right? Initiating plan. We had it all in place. Why did we break it? Well, the sixth edition was like 800, 900 pages. And so we had to separate the methodology from that. Because why? Because 2017 all of a sudden comes what? Agile and adaptive methods. And so with the sixth edition, we had to separate the methodologies and say, here's the methodologies over here, and here's the framework of project management. And so all along as we're doing this, we're keeping what does a project manager do in this area? And so they were not just changing the body of knowledge, they were changing the tasks a project manager performed, the exam content outline tasks, right? Now, with the eighth, we've had a little time with the seventh edition, which is the framework, and we have two practice guides, right?
Right.
And so you're using all these books. Well, okay, so it's sort of like you're a soldier, right? You're a soldier in ancient times and you have a sword. And you're given a brand new shiny sword. And our sword was what? The seventh edition of the PMBOK, right?
Yeah.
And we're saying that's a nice sword, but you know what? That pommel's a little heavy. And I don't like the straightness of the sword. Can we curve it? So, what's been happening behind the scenes inside Project Management Institute? They've been looking at the feedback of the framework, and people are saying, I like processes, and processes have to be there in Agile as well as in predictive methods for project management. So let's bring those back in. Let's have some processes across all methodology. And at the same time, you're talking about business over here, you're talking about governance over here, but governance is part of business too. And so we've been having these debates. Now, we've been working on this change on the PMBOK for quite a while.
Right.
And it's getting really big now because last year we acquired the Agile Alliance. Yes, PMI now owns the Agile Alliance. They're one group now, okay? That's a big statement. And I want you to, after this webinar is over, think about what this means for work, right? At the same time, we're looking at saying, this is too complicated. Let's make it easier and let's make it simpler. So as we go through the details and we talk about this, we're going to find it's going to be simple. Now, this is not the end of the story, right? We still have a few other surprises that PMI is going to release this year. And I'm sure all of us are going to have more conversations. But at the same time, this growth and this change happens as society changes, business has to change, politics has to change. And that means that we have to find our way. And that's what project management Institute has helped us with. They're always doing surveys and always looking forward and saying, do you like this? Well, sort of. Do you like this? Yes, yes, yes. And that's how we're going to be building the PMBOK of the future.
Those were some great insights, Tim. It's wonderful to know that the feedbacks are incorporated with every change, with every new edition that's coming out there. And you shared some amazing insights. I'm sure we're going to discuss all of that in detail in this coming slides as well. So before we go ahead and talk about the changes, it would be great if you could also give our audience some insights on the current exam format and also the kind of questions that they can expect if they are planning to take the current format exam and not the updated version. And for the audience here, I would like to understand how many of you are currently preparing for the PMP, or are you completely new to this and are you planning to write the exam after the update comes up? So please share your responses in the chat so we also understand where you all stand and what kind of expectations you have. Okay, so I
Oh,
think, yeah,
go
a
ahead.
lot of people are actually preparing right now. All right. So, for everyone that's preparing right now, we do have a 5 week plan we're going to talk about. And some people who are waiting for the new version, we also have a plan for all of you guys. So, we are covering everyone here, I suppose, okay, for the upcoming exam. So, Tim, I'll hand it over to you. Could you just briefly explain the current exam format and the question for context?
Okay, so if you look at the mechanics of the exam, it's totally random, but they break the questions into three categories for those of you who are just real new to this, right? And they have questions about business, questions about process like scope, schedule, cost, quality, risk, and so forth. And then they have questions about people management, what we call leadership, right? And so they've done this in such a way that you have like 50% of the questions on process and 40% of the question on process, on leadership, and then we have 10% on business. This makes a lot of sense, right? Well, it's not just that. It's this. It doesn't test your ability to memorize. It doesn't test your ability to recite. It tests the way you think about solving problems. It actually gives what we call scenario-based questions, where it sets up a scenario and it says, here you are, you're walking into a business meeting, and all of a sudden you see a person in the corner with a red face. You see a person on the side over here who's looking at their smartphone like this. And one of the other person is pretending to pick up the phone and talk about it and running out of the room. What do you do? And this is some of the hardest stuff that we have to introduce people to. It's not just an exam about doing spreadsheets and making sure everything's in line. It's how do I prepare people to do the good work? Okay, this is the big piece. And as we talk through this, you're going to see this. Now, the questions can be multiple choice. They could be multiple response, like you won't just have four options, you'll have five options, and they'll say choose two or choose three. They do have a few drag and drop, right? Like where they you may have three words and like three boxes, and you have to put them in the appropriate way. And matching and hotspot. Hotspot's interesting because it may ask you like at what point do you need to make a decision to ask for more money? And you're looking at the life cycle as a curve on a graph, right? Now, don't worry about hotspots and matching and drag and drop. And focus on the multiple choice and multiple response. Why? Because these scenario-based questions, right now, they're about 80 to 85% of the exam. So if you focus in that area, what do I do? How do I behave? How am I supposed to be thinking through these things? That's where you want to spend a lot of your effort. And it's not just effort on the exam, it's effort on being a project manager. Because as Shweta and I are going to be talking, these are the growth areas that we're all going to have to embrace over the next 20 to 40 years.
Right. Yeah, those were like great insights on the type of questions one can expect. And with a lot of participants actually giving the current format, examine the current format, I'm sure this is helpful for all of them to also think like project managers as they are preparing for the exam. Tim, another question I would like to pass on to you is also the domain weightage that is currently there for the current format and how one could prepare effectively for that. And the kind of topics they could focus on, because I believe the timeline for the update is it's coming up in July, so there's not much time left. So how can they manage this?
Random practice questions. Wherever you find communities of people. If you're not taking formal class, okay? If you're not taking formal class, find communities and forums that are talking about this and where people are saying where you need to go to find random practice questions. Because that's what, number one, that's what the exam is going to be like. You're surprised every time you turn a corner in your office, right? But it's reality as well. And it prepares you both for this. But at the same time, there are general areas that we look at. And in Project Management Institute in the PMP exam, we call these exam content outline tasks. Now, I've done the math when this current exam content outline came out. I've done the math, and assuming that the exam is random, you can actually look at these tasks in the exam content outline and you can make a broad assumption that says, okay, each one of these tasks are going to show up 4 or 5 times on the exam. And these tasks may be things like managing conflict or managing communications or collaborating with stakeholders or supporting team performance or supporting organizational change. And so if you look at those tasks, this is the way that Project Management Institute looks at the exam. It's task-based. And so your preparation should be task-based too. Now, these practice questions are great because if you get them wrong, that's where you want to study. You don't want to study the things you already learn. You want to study the things you get wrong. So it's not just going through the practice questions, but evaluating and now analyzing them and saying, okay, I'm getting quality questions wrong all the time, so I need to spend more time in that area. And that's basically what we're looking at for preparation. In some ways, it's simple, but you're going to be studying things that you don't know now. So there's going to be a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of people have negative responses to doing things they've never done before. But that's what this exam and the preparation's about. And you're going to get comfortable with uncertainty because if you get comfortable with uncertainty on the exam, you can take that and take that over into your work as well.
Thanks, Tim. That context really helps, and also some of the tips that you shared. I'm sure it's going to be helpful to everyone who's here with us. I also saw that a few of the participants today are your students who have joined us for this webinar because they would like to hear you and your perspective on the upcoming changes. So before we move into the changes, we would really love to hear your perspective on what's actually staying the same in PMP for all the candidates who are preparing now and also for the ones who are thinking ahead for taking the updated exam. So, what are some of the things that they can surely be confident would not change?
Okay, first of all, this whole idea of scenario-driven questions, that's not going away. So again, it's going to be questions. And I see a question in our Q&A that says, "What's a question?" Right? And let me set it up for you. Okay, here's a really good question. Um, your team made a change and didn't tell you about it, and the test failed. What went wrong? Basically, it's a question about the exam content outline, about change control, right? But it's not because was it the problem that they made the change without change control, or was it about communications? And you're saying it's a little of both, isn't it? But you only have an option to change one. Now, the questions are not that tricky, okay? But they do have a little bit of trickiness in them And these are the type of questions you have. Like I said earlier in this webinar, you're walking into a conference room, you're walking into a business meeting, and you see these things. What do you do? And when you prepare and you read the material and you study the material, there are certain things you can do. You can assess, you can figure out what the level of conflict is. Do I need to step in? How do I need to step in? How do I influence? And do I need to pull out my tricks of conflict management to help me? And so these are the things that we talk in PMP preparation about, but at the same time, these are the type of questions that we're going to be answering. Now, leadership is going to be focused on a lot too, right? When we think of leadership, we think of be a leader, be a leader. We have used the word leader so much over the last decades that it almost has lost its meaning. But leadership, in some ways, is no more than understanding human behavior and how to work with it instead of fight against it. And so we have a lot of material. And again, this is not just Simplilearn material. This is Project Management Institute material too, that says, here's what we know works in working with people. You can't just give them direction and then say, why didn't you do that, right? You have to give them the tools they need, give them, give them the environment they need to get the work done. And this is the type of thing that we're looking at. And then all the delivery approaches are there. Agile's not going away. Predictive project management is not going away. Why? Because we're going to constantly do construction. And when you have electricity and you have plumbing, you need a traditional approach to projects. As well, hybrid is showing up more and more in the work environments. My students are saying, yeah, it's not really agile and it's not really predictive. What is it? It's sort of a gray thing. Now, the other things are the expectations of the exam stay consistent. And I like how this slide was put up. You have to show strong problem solving. Ethics is big, a good sense of wrong or right. How many, and think about this. How many of you have had a firm stand on ethics? Well, our grandparents taught us this, and our parents taught us this. But when we get to university and when we get to business, I hate to say this, but because we're humans, sometimes we take shortcuts and we forget about what's wrong or right. So PMI is standing behind that as well. And also, the value of the credential remains unchanged. This is big, okay? This is really big. The PMP, you'd think with everybody having a PMP, it would dilute the value, but it doesn't. It actually means that we need more and more people thinking like this way, because how many of you, and this is a good question for you to take back to your offices and think about this. How many of you are working for managers who were formally trained in management? And why haven't they taken the courses that you're thinking they're taking?
Right. Yeah, that's a very important question. And we would like to see some answers also in the chat for some of your questions regarding the presentation. Like I mentioned earlier, you will receive the presentation and the resources if you fill up the poll that will be shared towards the end of the webinar. So I hope that answers your query. And regarding the exam content outline, there's a question if it's changing. I think we're going to talk about what's actually changing in PMP exam right now. That's the slide we are moving to. So once Tim explains that, he will surely explain if the exam content outline is changing and how you can prepare for it as well. So Tim, it would be of great help if you can talk about the changes that are coming up, because I see a lot of questions regarding the changes that are happening and what we can expect.
Okay, so the exam content outline's changing, okay? And that's part of the release that we're going to see here in April. April is the big time when we go from the old exam content outline that we have now to the new one, okay? It's also the time when we're going to start as having as official the eighth edition. Right now, it's out. You can actually look at these documents and you can download. If you're a paid member to PMI, you can download the eighth edition of the PMBOK if you want to. But we're still on the seventh right now. They're giving us time to evaluate. And it's not just people who are thinking about project management time. It's also the trainers and the universities and the educators and the researchers who need the time too. Now, with the exam content outline, it's big, okay? First of all, of course, artificial intelligence. And we think, yeah, automation. It thinks part of my job's going away. What do I focus on? It's not just that. It's the wrong and the right of using artificial intelligence. How do I use it in a way that is not just effective, but also basically says, there are good ways to use it and bad ways to do it. And it's not just the mechanics of using it. And then we're talking about, the ethics of our work itself. I want to give an example. I was working on a data center project back in 2005, and I was working with a CIO up in the northwest part of the United States, right? And she was in an elevator with me, and we had just gone to lunch. We were going back to the conference room. And she said, Tim, that was a great lunch. You've given me great ideas. And she said, why? You know what? I could actually cut a third of my IT staff. And I'm thinking, good golly, I've just told the CIO how to use technology, and I could be the source of getting 200 people fired in the next 2 years. This is what we have to think about as project managers. We have that influence, and we have to take this seriously. Finance, we're not, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. We don't talk about budget or cost anymore. We talk about finance, which is not just the tactical moving of money, but the strategic use of money. And then the interesting thing about the body of knowledge seventh edition, we started talking about governance more and more, and we're starting to talk about compliance more and more. And this is coming to the surface too. Um, and also, what's going on in and around the project? This is a real key, okay? Um, we saw this since 2019. How many of us were caught in the middle of a project with COVID and lockdown? And we want to make sure project managers are aware of what's happening, not just like things like diseases that just pop up, but changes in laws and regulations and changes in policy that affect our corporations and our organizations that we have to respond to and our projects have to respond to.
Right. So those are some major changes that are coming up. A lot of new topics covered, and AI definitely being one of those. And I hope we actually gave you all some context on what's changing. And we're also going to talk about if this exam is going to get harder in the coming slides, because I saw a question regarding that as well. So now, Tim, for anyone who is preparing to take the upcoming the exam once the PMBOK 8 is published, what are some of the question types that they can expect, and what would the exam format look like? Would the exam format have any major changes, and if so, how can they prepare for it effectively?
For those of you who have not done research on the Project Management Institute website, I suggest you do. What I do you mind if I type this in the chat window, Shweta,
No, no problem.
real quickly? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So I want you to go to pmi.org after this exam is over, and then click on certifications, PMP, And then you want to go to the bottom where it says, what does it say here? I'm looking at it right now on my screen. New PMP. Okay. It's near at the bottom. And you can actually download the exam content outline. The new one, and it's not active right now. It's not the formal one, but you can see the changes. And in the back of it, it covers all the different types of questions and it shows examples. And so I don't have to describe it to you. You can pull up the exact 2026 exam content outline and look at the examples yourself. And we're going to have scenario based questions a lot. We're going to have graphs that you're going to have to interpret. We're going to have concept pairing, right? We're talking about qualitative analysis versus quantitative analysis. We're talking about identified risk and unidentified risk and how they relate and how they're different. And then we're still going to have hotspot. We're going to use the more complex technology tools that we have to actually take exams on computers, but it's still going to be primarily scenario based. Okay. It's going to be how do I have to think, behave, and decide as a project manager?
Right. That was very helpful. I hope all of you use this resource that Tim just mentioned to get a better understanding of what is coming up next. And I also saw a question in the chat, and I think I would like to pass it on to you, Tim. I think he wants to know what will happen if someone passes the current PMP exam, and is there any change that's happening after PMBOK 8 is released? Is there any update for the ones who have currently passed the PMBOK 7th edition?
Oh dear. Oh dear. I'm not going to get it out, but you should see the PMBOK that I studied under. It was like 200 pages. It's a little tiny book about like this. And if you look at the books now, they're huge, right? And so how does PMI do this? They use recertification. And so you have to be recertified every 3 years. Now, they do this in many ways. Recertification can be being an active project manager, it can be reading books, it can be taking more classes, it can be self study. So if you are actually taking this class or taking this webinar, this may be part of your self study towards what we call professional development units or hours of study and research to actually improve. And so you start with your PMP and you retain your PMP by remaining constantly update. I just got my recertification in December, so I'm going to be basically studying for the next 3 years so I can recertify again.
Okay, all right. So I think that clarifies the question, and I think that's applicable to everyone who's here who has already completed the PMP exam. Now that we actually spoke about the exam format and the questions and how they can have an understanding of it, I think one thing often comes up is the confusion between PMBOK 7th edition and the 8th one. So Tim, could you walk us through how PMBOK 7 and PMBOK 8 differ, and how candidates should think about these changes from a preparation and leadership perspective?
Okay, so PMBOK 7 was big, right? Like I said, we took predictive methods, traditional project management out of it, right? And we said, here are the principles. Principles are important because the principles are the ways you think that shape your behavior, right? We're talking about leadership and we're talking about making decisions and mindset. Okay. And then we had 8 performance domains. Well, they're not going away. What we found out was maybe we have too many principles. Like maybe some of the principles, like stewardship, right? isn't stewardship a part of leadership? And so, what the authors were, and there are 50 authors or more sometimes when we build these new editions of the PMBOK, have debated and discussed and researched, and they say, well, stewardship is part of leadership. So, we took those 12 principles and we dropped them into six principles, and they're more action based. As well, we have performance domains, and we went from 8 to 7 here, right? It's it's very interesting what we have changed, and we may talk about this a little bit more, but we want to look at that. And the seventh edition of the PMBOK said processes are part of predictive methodology. We want to look at agile and uncertainty and focus on that right now. Well, we did that. So we're coming back to processes, and we're saying we used to have 49 processes, but if you look across all of Agile and traditional or predictive projects, it seems like they're 40 because, again, some of these things overlap, and we want to look at it, and we want these processes to be, to be understood both in agile methods as well as traditional methods. And we have focus areas. Focus areas are what we used to call process groups, right? Initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, closing. And the authors, as well as feedback, said that's still a good way to think about projects because you still initiate and plan and execute agile, and you still do it in predictive methods. The other part is we're saying, okay, technology, different ways of analysis, this whole idea of project management offices and contracts are becoming more and more important. So we want to bring that and make it visible. This is interesting because in the seventh edition of the PMBOK, one of the appendices is about project management offices. And now we're bringing it to the formal discussion. We saw this with the sixth edition of the PMBOK when they did the same thing with Agile. They put it as an aside note in the fifth edition. And then in the sixth edition, they said, it's so important, we're going to say, here's the practice guide. Look at all the detail there. And then finally, we're looking at what projects do. They don't just provide a change or a deliverable. They provide something called value. If there's no value, why do you do it? I'm not, I'm talking about value like, do people want this type of dessert over this type of dessert or this condiment over this condiment, right? It's not just that value. I tell this story. I was part of a corporation back in 2000 where they put $1 billion into a set of children's toys. And they were great because they were science marvels, but the children didn't want them. And that was $1 billion of waste. This is what we want to focus on. How can we help businesses focus on what's really going to be meaningful, not just for the businesses, but the people who actually buy the products and services that the business create?
Thanks, Tim. That clearly explained the key differences between PMBOK 7 and 8 and also gave us clarity as to why these changes are necessary with the changes that are happening in today's world and the kind of work that we do as well. So, project managers do have to change the way they think, prioritize work, and a lot of other aspects. So, thank you for those insights. Can I download the resource? So for all of you, we are going to cover that in the coming slide. So Tim, could you just briefly explain what they can expect and how to prepare for it along with the timelines for all the updates?
Okay. Okay, this is a lot of questions you have. If you are preparing for the exam right now, prepare under the current exam content outline and the PMBOK 7. Okay, do it. Do it. You've already invested time and you have time to prepare. Okay, they have a window that says April. we're going to turn on the new exam. Now, there's a small window of opportunity that showed up in December that says, do you want to be an early candidate? A lot of us don't like to have these opportunities because, again, it's like driving the initial model of a car. Of course there are going to be things that you're going to have to get fixed and do that type of thing. I would suggest you take the exam under the current version, okay, just for the stability and the confidence that you have. And then if you are thinking about preparing April and moving forward, that's when we want to actually say, yes, we go to the new content there, okay? That's the big detail. And also April is when companies like Simplilearn are going to use the new Project Management Institute training content. So we're going to be all prepared in April to teach you well here too. Again, if you're an early adopter and you're comfortable with the risk, go ahead and do it because early adopters probably invest a lot more time and consideration because they're curious about it, right? And that's good, and you'll pass, I'm sure. But for the most of us, I would say either continue on the path now, or if you're starting in April, go with the updated material.
Right. Thank you for that, Tim. That actually gives us a lot of clarity, and I'm hoping that a few of them also try this new format and give the exam in the updated format. And for anyone who is preparing, they do have a confusion, especially with people who recently started their preparation around November or December. They have a few more months left, like 2 to 3 months, right? So, could you share some tips on how they can choose? If they are eligible to take the PMP in the current exam format? You did mention that most of the people who are already preparing it would be beneficial if they take the current exam because they've spent a good amount of time preparing the current format in the current exam content outline as well. So, could you briefly give us an idea of who could be of advantage with the current exam format and who could benefit from the updated format, because it could be subjective and people could have their own strong points. So could you please explain that?
Okay, so when you're preparing for the exam, Project Management Institute says you need 35 hours of formal training. And that can happen in a university setting, that can happen in a training setting like we do in Simplilearn. It can even be self-study, right? If you're already doing this, go for it. Okay, go for it. And stay on track. Okay, it'll take maybe 6 to 10 weeks to get ready. You do have to go through all the content, and then you have to look at going through lots of practice questions. Why? Because these practice questions, not only are they random, but they can include any material. It's not like you're going to run into a question that's only quality. It's going to be quality with a little bit of risk and maybe some communications. So you want to get through that formal training and focus on that specific, way of how these practice questions work. And again, if you like fewer technical questions, like what we call interactive, where you click a screen or something, and you like multiple choice, I would suggest you stay with the current exam too. And and again, we have stable resources. We understand this. We have confidence. We've been working under this exam content outline and even this seventh edition of the PMBOK for a few years now. And we're confident. Students can be more confident, and you'll be able to do that. And that's the big thing. And again, it's your threshold to risk, right? It's your threshold to uncertainty that would say, let me try this. I don't mind investing a little extra time. Now, the other people who could actually benefit from the updated exam is this is totally new and you're not ready to really hit the books and get into formal training or review what you studied in the university or whatever and go right in. You're not ready yet. You want to think carefully about a plan. That's where we go into the updated exam. Also, if you work better with visuals and scenarios and interactive question types, like we said, the more graphically focused ones, that may work for you a lot better. And also, um, maybe you want to look at the new material and you want to say, that was yesterday. This is where I'm going for the next 3 or 4 years. So let's look at that. They're out there already. You can start looking at that right now, and you can do a more graduated preparation from here to then without the push and the stress. And finally, um, if you don't mind taking a little more time, and I will say, a lot of my students, they're really good. They're really good with Excel. They're really good with analysis. But when it gets to human behavior, it's confusing. So if you want to study that type of material and review that a little bit more, I would also go with the updated exam with the longer preparation range, okay?
That comparison actually clears up a lot of questions and gives greater understanding and context as to when to take the exam. Completely subjective to the person taking the exam and how comfortable they are and their preferences as well. So we hope you take a call based on your preferences and your comfort level, because the timeline is also quite short. So if you are currently preparing, you will have to clear it before the change happens, right? And with that, I think there's an obvious question that comes to the minds of people who are preparing right now. So especially with the update coming up, could you please share like a 5 week plan or something that can help them clear this in such a short span of time? Because that is going to be quite challenging if they are planning to get this done.
So businesses and corporations all want things to happen yesterday. And as a project manager, we're constantly trying to predict a rational, logical approach that will give us a higher probability of success. Well, that applies to preparing for the exam too. Um, a lot of my students say, I want the PMP yesterday. That's great. Let's talk about reality. I don't want to say that's not achievable, but I want to say the investment in time and effort may be more than you're ready to do today. So when I look at people and their demands from businesses and their personal lives and everything else that's going on around them, 5 to 10 weeks is about as short as you want to do. And what I look at it is, can I set aside an hour a day to study? I mean study. I mean going through the material, reviewing the material, and then getting through all the material, and then starting working on practice questions and using the practice questions to find where your gaps are. And if you do this in a very focused, intentional way, you can actually do this in, like we said, 5 to 10 weeks. I say 4 to 8 weeks. I like to say 6 because I'm sort of risk averse, but at the same time, 5 to 10 is a reasonable range. Build your foundations, go through all of the material, whether it's a book about project management, whether it's a class or whether it's a training session, and get all the way through the material and then go into the specific topics as you're doing this, right? And start thinking situationally, like these bullets over on week 2, you see, learn how to handle escalations, practice 60 to 80 people questions and review every mistake. I say go through about 10 or 20 questions a day. Why? Because it takes, if you do them, even if it takes you 5 minutes for each question, 10 questions is 50 minutes, that's an hour. And then the next day you can come and say, okay, I'm going to grade them now, and I'm going to find my gaps, and I'm going to use my hour to study today. And do this on a very, like I said, focused, very, very specific, very intentional way. And you should see changes in your score every 3 or 4 days. Focus on the areas where you are weakest, and that's really important. And also, as you get further and further in, start thinking more about business and the environment, because we're so focused when we start studying project management about what? Schedule, cost, risk, all these things, lining up our resources. And we forget that that's just that's just part of the exam. And don't forget these gaps too, especially if you're getting a lot of these questions wrong. And then when you're actually hitting, a score, I say in my classes 80 to 85% correct. But if you want to use 75% as your milestone metric, go ahead and use that and say, okay, at this point, let me try out, see what it is to sit in a chair for 3 hours and 50 minutes and go through question after question. What does it feel like? So I won't be so excited or so anxious when I hit the test center or I log into the exam.
Thank you for sharing such a wonderful plan and also for giving them insights on how to prepare and also about the number of times they have to take the mock exams and understanding their weak points as well. So we hope all of these tips really helped you. With the interest of time, we cannot actually cover the plan for the updated exam format. We have to wrap it up fast. So we will be sharing a post-webinar resource with all of you, which has the 5-week plan for the current exam format and also a plan for the updated exam format. So we will share that with all of you once you fill up the poll. And now I'll quickly like to tell you about the PMP certification training that we offer at Simplilearn. This could help you in your preparation journey if you are already preparing. So these are some of our key highlights. So first, staying ahead is actually very important at this point, right? So you get 35 contact hours through a live dynamic virtual learning experience. And second, we actually transform project management into real leadership. So these are not generic lectures. So these are master classes focused on how project managers think and lead. So we have mentors like Tim taking up our session. So you can just imagine the kind of experience that you'll have. Third, we have a strong support during the preparation. So you're going to get access to cheat sheets, study plans, and also expert guidance when you're stuck. In case you have any questions, our team is there to answer all of your queries as well. And fourth, and one very important point that we cover is that you get hands-on practice that actually mirrors the real exam. So you are going to get 12 full-length simulated exams. Additionally, you will get 500 plus PMI style questions and 1,500 plus question bank. So the kind of mocks that you give will definitely prepare you for the exam, even if there's just some time left to clear the current exam in the current exam format. And fifth, you will also get smart feedback powered by AI. So you have unlimited AI powered mock interviews and real time feedback to help you identify the weak areas that Tim was just talking about, that you really need to focus on that to clear the exam in a short span of time. And sixth, support that does not stop when the class ends. So you will get 24/7 course assistance. So whether it's just a concept that you're not sure of or an exam related question, you're never stuck. You can always reach out at any point of time and you're going to get help in figuring that out. And then finally, the curriculum itself. So Tim has been a major player in designing the curriculum for PMP with Simplilearn, and it's a comprehensive PMI aligned and delivered by PMP certified mentors and trainers. So you are going to be in great hands if you choose to be a part of this program. So you're not just preparing to pass an exam, you're actually preparing the right way to lead as a project management. So these are just some key highlights that I wanted to point out here. And some of the skills that are covered as a part of PMP certification at Simplilearn are the following that you can see on the screen as well. So there's work breakdown structure, Gantt charts, project cost estimating, and a lot more. So I'll quickly move on to the eligibility criteria also for the PMP certification, a question that we get asked a lot. And I think I would pass this on to Tim. Tim, could you please explain for all the beginners? I see a few students who are asking this question as well. Will they be eligible for the exam? What are the requirements? And when should they register? And there's one specific question about how she can register for the exam if she has not registered yet.
Okay, so if you look at, if I'll answer the question first. If you look at the website and the link certifications PMP, that will take you into the application page, basically the page, and you'll have to create a PMI account because you want to be secure. You're passing personal information between your computer and the PMI website, right? And that's going to help you build the application. And that application is going to be reviewed by PMI, and they're going to say, yep, you have the qualifications needed. Now, what are these qualifications? They're threefold. Number one, formal training. Number two, project management experience. And let's see, number three, let's see, I forget what else it is. Anyway, those are the specific criteria, right? If you have a bachelor's degree, it only takes 36 months or 3 years of experience. And that experience can be across the last 3 to 8 years if you want. I was a consultant back in 2001. So I was doing major projects all the time. I was 80% utilized. It was easy. But some of us, need 4 or 5 years to get those 3 years of experience. Now, if you don't have a bachelor's degree, you're going to have 5 years of experience that you need to document. So those are the big deals that we're looking at. Those are the specific criteria. And again, what's going to happen is, and I'll spend just a few seconds here, is they're going to review your application. Then they're going to ask a few questions, or if there are no questions, they're going to say, okay, you're accepted, spend your money, and then we're going to give you a key to take the exam, right? And that key is going to be available for the next year. That's the beautiful thing. Once you apply and you pay your money, then you have a year to prepare for and take the exam. And then that 5 or 10 weeks can be 5 or 10 weeks, or it can be 52 weeks if you use it.
Thanks for clearly explaining that, Tim. I think that answered a lot of questions that we received as well regarding the eligibility criteria. So, for everyone who is here and interested to take up the PMP exam, we'll quickly go through the fees and financing options that we offer. So, for Indian learners, the course fee is 10,999 rupees, and for US learners, it's $699. And we have a batches starting on the 10th of Jan and another batch on 17th of Jan. So if you're planning to take the current exam in the current format, we would highly recommend you to join these batches. Tim also has a batch coming up really soon. So if you are lucky, you can join that as well. So I'll also quickly launch a poll. If you're interested to take up the program, you can click on a yes and our team will reach out to you. Okay, I hope all of you are able to respond to this current poll. Yeah, so I can see a lot of responses come in. So what will happen is our team will reach out to you and get all of your questions answered. If you have any queries or concerns, you can definitely ask them, and they are like our program advisors. They can help you with any query that you may have. Right. So in the meantime, I will also check for some questions that were not answered. So Tim, there's a question from Neelam, and she wants to ask if I pass the current PMP exam and to upgrade late, so after 3 years, will she have to complete just the PDUs or retake the exam for PMBOK 8?
This is the beauty of recertification. If you recertify before your project management professional certificate expires, you never have to take the exam again. You can just keep on collecting like 20 professional development hours every year and documenting them on the PMI website. And you don't have to be a PMI member to do that. Okay. And there's no difference between the PMP under the 8th edition and the PMP under the 7th edition. It's just that we are refining the framework, the standard. And what you're doing is saying, number one, I know what it is right now, currently. And then for the next 3 years, you're saying, oh, what does this mean? How does this work? And this is how we progress. Um, it's the beauty of the PMP. Sometimes I think, wouldn't it be nice if there were graduated levels of PMP? But the wisdom is, we're all PMPs, we're all learning, we're all students. Even myself, I'm still a student. And so my PMP has just as much value as yours.
Thanks for clarifying that, Tim. That's really insightful and helpful. So I'm going to quickly end the poll right here so we can move on to the certificate of participation. So I'm going to launch another poll. You can fill up your full name and you will receive your certificates and also the post webinar resources in the email IDs within 48 hours. Please let me know if it is visible to all of you. All right.
And by the way, Shweta, there's another question out in the webinar chat. When is the last exam happening in PMBOK 7 format? It's going to be June. They turn on the new exam in July. So if you think about it, we're going to be teaching under the new format starting April. And every training company under PMI who ascribes to the PMI training content like Simplilearn is going to make that change in April, okay?
Yeah, so I think we have answered most of the questions, and I see a few responses in the chat with the names. So, in case you are not able to fill up the your full name in the poll, what you can do is you can mail us at webinars@simplylearn.net, and we will share the certificates with you because we do not really record the responses from the chat. So you can always mail us, and as you guys are responding to the poll, I think I would like to take this opportunity to thank Tim once again for this webinar. I'm so happy that you could join us. It was great insights from your side, as always. I truly enjoyed this conversation. So, before we close, Tim, is there any advice that you would like to leave with all the participants who have joined us today?
So by studying and preparing, you're actually building confidence, but the real confidence comes from your PMP, right? That's when you're really confident. Say, I am an expert PMP because this exam says it, right? So if you don't have confidence by starting out today, what do you start out with? Well, we start off with human behavior. There are two factors that all humans have. We do things that we're uncertain about when we're either concerned, I need this. I can't have a job like I have now, or I want a job, or I want a job that's better, right? And then we have curiosity. If look at your curiosity, look at your concern, and use that as the driving influence. This is possibly one of the first lessons we have as a leader. And this is how we lead people. And people don't have confidence. We use curiosity and concern. And so by learning leadership and leading yourself, you're already on the step towards preparing.
Thank you so much for that wonderful advice. I hope all of you keep your curiosity alive as well and explore more opportunities and learn new things along the way as well. And I would also like to thank all of you for staying back and listening to the entire webinar. It was great hosting all of you, and thanks for the engagement and responses. I truly enjoyed being a part of this webinar, and I really hope you did too. So if you have any feedbacks, please feel free to share it with us. And I hope to see you all in the upcoming webinars. as well. So I'm quickly ending the poll for anyone who was not able to do it. You can just mail us and we will surely share the resources. But please keep in mind that you'll receive it within 48 hours, right? So thank you again, everyone. Hope you all have a wonderful day or evening ahead. So I'm going to quickly end the webinar. See you all soon.